the reality that was never one. There is a misunderstanding most people live inside. The belief that reality is singular, solid, stable. One world, one version, one story moving forward in a straight line. That belief is useful and false. Reality is not a fixed structure. It is a field, a living field of probabilities, states, and potentials, layered on top of one another, occupying the same space, responding to coherence. Quantum physics does not describe a universe made of things. It describes a universe made of relationships, waves of possibility, collapsing into form only when conditions allow it. Reality does not break when it shifts. It reorganizes. Pause. Breathe. What people call another world is rarely somewhere else. It is the same reality, experienced through a different configuration of consciousness. Same structures, same environment, different expression. One ordered, one distorted. This happens when coherence is lost. When emotion, memory, identity, and perception fall out of alignment. The result is not chaos immediately. The result is a shadow state, a version of reality where everything familiar still exists, but stripped of warmth, flow, and vitality. Entropy rises, movement slows, energy stagnates. Spiritually, this is the shadow, not evil, unintegrated. Psychology names it repression. Physics names it decoherence. Hermetic wisdom names it imbalance. Different languages, same phenomenon. When parts of consciousness are denied, they do not disappear. They go elsewhere in the field. They accumulate. They distort. They begin to influence reality from beneath awareness. This is why suppressed fear returns as threat, why unprocessed grief returns as weight, why ignored trauma returns with force. Dark humor moment. The universe has a sense of irony. Whatever you refuse to feel eventually introduces itself very loudly. This is the hidden warning encoded in modern myth, including, briefly, in a certain popular series, Stranger Things, where a town exists in two states at once, not because fiction predicts reality, but because storytelling is where truth hides when people are not ready to hear it directly. The real split is not between worlds. It is between what is acknowledged and what is denied. When consciousness fragments, reality reflects that fragmentation, not as punishment, as resonance. Energy follows coherence. Experience follows attention. And when coherence collapses, reality does not end. It darkens, becomes heavier, colder, more predatory, not because something invaded, but because something already present was never integrated. Pause. Breathe. This is the foundation. Before power, before control, before attempts to cross boundaries, one truth must land first. The most dangerous realities are not discovered. They are generated when consciousness refuses to stay whole. The next chapter reveals what happens when institutions try to force access to these layers without understanding coherence, and why control is the fastest way to turn potential into catastrophe. When control replaces coherence. When human consciousness encounters something it does not understand, it tries to control it. This is not evil, it is instinct. Control feels safer than uncertainty. Measurement feels safer than mystery. Ownership feels safer than humility. So when subtle layers of reality are sensed, when perception hints that more exists than the surface allows, the impulse is not to integrate, it is to extract, to open. to access, to weaponize. This is where things fracture. Because consciousness is not a machine, it is a field, and fields do not respond well to force. Quantum systems remain stable only when coherence is preserved. When waves move in harmony, structure emerges. When coherence is disrupted, patterns decay. This is not metaphor, it is physics. The same applies to perception. When attention is fragmented, when emotion is suppressed, when identity is unstable, the field destabilizes. Attempts to access deeper layers of reality without inner coherence do not reveal truth. They amplify distortion. Psychology shows this clearly. Trauma fragments awareness. Fragmented awareness weakens boundaries. Weakened boundaries allow intrusion, not invasion from elsewhere, but overflow from what was never integrated. Hermetic wisdom states it cleanly. He who seeks power before balance invites chaos, not as moral judgment, as structural law. Dark humor moment. Turns out you can't rip open the fabric of reality with unresolved emotional baggage and expect it to behave politely. When institutions try to force access to hidden layers, they bypass the one requirement that cannot be skipped: stability of the observer. Because the observer is not separate from what is observed. Observation is interaction. Interaction is influence. Unstable observers do not reveal deeper reality. They distort it. This is why altered states without grounding produce fear instead of insight. Why obsession with control produces monsters instead of understanding. Why power pursued without coherence creates shadow instead of clarity. Reality does not punish curiosity. It reflects the state of the one looking. Pause. Breathe. This is the missing lesson. Access without integration leads to decay. Knowledge without coherence leads to collapse. Not because reality is hostile, but because it is responsive. The deeper layers of existence are not guarded by gates. They are guarded by inner order. And without that order, what emerges is not truth. It is amplification of everything unresolved. The next chapter reveals how identity, emotion, and attention become the stabilizing force, and why some minds can move through layered reality safely, while others fracture under the same exposure. The observer that holds the field. Reality does not respond to thought alone. That is the lie that keeps people frustrated. Reality responds to coherence, to the alignment between attention, emotion, body, and identity. This is where the observer becomes critical. In quantum mechanics, observation is not passive. It is interaction. The outcome depends not only on what is observed, but on the state of the observer. A coherent observer collapses probability cleanly. An incoherent observer produces noise. The field does not judge, it reflects. This is why identity matters more than intention. Identity is the organizing principle of perception. It determines what feels possible, safe, or accessible. Emotion is the charge. Emotion supplies energy to the signal. Without emotion, intention dissipates. With chaotic emotion, intention destabilizes. Attention is the direction. Attention selects which part of the field becomes relevant. When these three are aligned, identity, emotion, attention, the system stabilizes. This is coherence. And coherence allows movement through layers of reality without distortion. This is not mystical privilege. It is structural integrity. Psychology confirms it. Integrated identity produces resilience. Fragmented identity produces intrusion. Trauma does not weaken consciousness by force. It weakens it by splitting it. When awareness fragments, boundaries thin. And thin boundaries do not protect, they leak. Hermetic wisdom describes this as inner division. A house divided against itself cannot stand. Not a moral teaching, a structural one. Dark humor moment. You cannot hold the fabric of reality steady while arguing with yourself internally. The field notices. This is why some individuals can encounter intense states and emerge clearer, while others encounter the same states and fracture. Same field, different coherence. This is also why power collapses when identity collapses. When someone forgets who they are, attention scatters. When attention scatters, the field responds unpredictably. This is not punishment. It is resonance. Pause. Breathe. Stability is not control. Stability is presence. Presence means nothing is being avoided, nothing suppressed, nothing split off. The observer remains whole, and wholeness is what allows access. Without it, deeper layers do not open. They spill. And what spills is not truth. It is distortion amplified by fear. The next chapter reveals why frequency, rhythm, and memory are the tools that restore coherence, and why identity, once destabilized, can be recalled and reassembled through resonance rather than force. The frequency that reassembles the self. When coherence collapses, it does not return through effort. This is where most people fail. They try to think their way back. They try to control. They try to overpower instability with will. That only adds noise. Coherence is not forced. It is entrained. In physics, systems synchronize through resonance. A stable frequency brings unstable systems back into order. Waves align. Chaos dampens. Structure reemerges. The nervous system works the same way. It does not respond first to meaning. It responds to rhythm, breath, heartbeat, sound, repetition. This is why rhythm predates language, why music bypasses logic, why familiarity calms faster than explanation. Frequency organizes matter. Rhythm organizes consciousness. When identity fragments, memory scatters. When memory scatters, perception loses continuity. So coherence must be restored at the level where it was lost, not by convincing the mind, but by stabilizing the field. This is why certain sounds anchor awareness, why repeated patterns restore orientation, why familiar resonance recalls identity. Identity is not stored as a story. It is stored as a pattern, and patterns respond to frequency. Hermetic wisdom describes this elegantly. Vibration is the substance of form, not metaphor. Mechanism. Change the vibration and form reorganizes. Dark humor moment. This explains why arguing with panic never works, but humming, breathing, or grounding suddenly does. The body understands order before the mind does. Once rhythm stabilizes the nervous system, attention returns. Once attention returns, identity reassembles. And once identity is coherent again, the field responds differently. Threat recedes. Distortion fades. Boundaries restore themselves. Not because something external changed, but because the observer regained integrity. This is why integration is the real victory. Not defeating shadow, not escaping darkness, but restoring continuity. Pause. Breathe. Coherence is remembered, not learned. The system already knows how to be whole. It only forgets under pressure. The final chapter closes the circle. Because once coherence is restored, the question is no longer how to survive layered reality. It is how to live responsibly inside it. And why maintaining coherence is the most important discipline a conscious being can practice. The responsibility of a coherent mind. Once coherence is restored, nothing dramatic announces it. No lights, no portals, no orchestral swell. Life simply stops fighting you. And that is how you know it worked. Because coherence does not produce spectacle. It produces stability. This is the part rarely spoken. Access to layered reality is not the achievement. Maintenance is. Anyone can destabilize perception. Fear does it daily. But maintaining coherence, that is discipline. Reality does not demand belief. It demands consistency. The field responds to what is sustained, not what is imagined once and abandoned. This is why responsibility emerges naturally once awareness deepens. Because incoherence is no longer abstract. Its consequences become visible. Fragmentation leaks into the environment. Unresolved emotion distorts interaction. Unstable identity destabilizes systems around it. Not spiritually, practically. Hermetic wisdom names this simply. Power without balance destroys its holder. Not a threat, a description. Dark humor moment. Turns out expanding consciousness without self-regulation is like upgrading your engine and forgetting the brakes. The deeper truth is this. You are not here to escape reality. You are here to hold it together. Through presence, through integration, through refusing to abandon parts of yourself because they are uncomfortable. Wholeness is not perfection. It is inclusion. When nothing is rejected, nothing needs to hide. And when nothing hides, reality has no shadow left to weaponize. Pause. Breathe. This is why coherence is contagious. A regulated nervous system calms others. A stable identity grounds interaction. A coherent observer stabilizes the field around them, not as mysticism, as resonance. The final inversion is simple. The world does not need more people trying to open doors. It needs more people who can stand steadily once they are open. Because reality mirrors the state of its observers. And the most powerful act available to consciousness is not control. It is coherence. Hold that. And the world reorganizes quietly. Not into fantasy, into something far rarer. A reality that no longer needs to fracture to get your attention.